Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I've got some terrifying subscriber submissions and a couple other terrifying encounters to share with you. Before we get into today's upload, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that, well, they really don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now, everyone, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Before we get into the encounters, about a week ago, maybe a little longer than a week ago, a subscriber named Elizabeth reached out. She had lost her son in a horrible motorcycle accident. She just emailed me, and I wanted to read that email to you guys because it's addressed to you guys as well. Jeffrey, I want to thank you for your response and your kind and encouraging words. I had to take my mind off of things, and I listened to your upload. Jeffrey, I was so blessed by the kind, caring words and prayers from so many subscribers in this amazing community you have created on your channel. I was so overwhelmed with my pain that I needed to take my mind off of everything, even if it was for a brief moment. I read every response. As I read each one, I began to cry and felt the comfort, support, and peace I so needed at that moment. I wanted to respond to each one personally, but there was so many. I'm blown away. It is a blessing to know that there are more good and caring people in this world than the media portrays. To everyone who took time to share your prayers, words of encouragement, I want to say thank you very much. Your words gave me reprieve from my pain and reminded me to cling to my faith, family, and friends. You were a strength for me in a very bad moment where I needed so much to not think. You helped me through a very dark moment where I felt like I was drowning in sorrow. I know it will get better in time. There will be good days, bad days, days you feel you can't breathe. In those times, rest in God, your family and friends. Cherish the memories and remember the good times you shared with those you have lost. Thank you all so much for your support and prayers. God bless you all, your friend Elizabeth. Because so many of you guys sent words of encouragement, prayer, I felt it necessary to share this email with you guys. Because not just myself, but this whole community prayed for Elizabeth and the loss of her loved one. And it must have been very hard and still very hard. So, thank you, everyone. Today's first subscriber submission. Hello, Jeff. I saw a white wolf this morning, I think. I work security overnight at this wind farm, and once an hour we have to drive down the road to a substation to check in. My post is in North Texas, just miles from the Oklahoma border. Anyway, I was making my last run to the substation, and as soon as I got to the gate, I saw this massive white wolf. It wasn't right, though. It looked like it was hunched, like the front legs were longer than the back. It was on all fours, and it was as tall as the hood of my truck, a Chevy Silverado. I didn't see the face. I was looking from the back forward and saw its head turn back facing front of it. So I know it did look at me. I just didn't see its face. Now, when I see coyotes, my post is 15 miles into nowhere, they haul ass. Not this thing. It moved slow, and I watched it take 2 steps. Then I got gone. It was still there when I left, all the way back to my main post, I was wigging out, thinking this thing was following me back down. It creeped me out very badly. This thing wasn't pretty like wolves are. The fur was long and shaggy and filthy looking. It had a tail, but it kept it near its legs, so I couldn't see how long it really was, but it was bushy. I Googled to see if any wolves are in Texas and Oklahoma, and they are saying none roam wild. In the end, it may very well have been a wolf, but it was by no means a pretty one, and something was very off with it. A little footnote here. One of the guys that I work out here with asked me just last week if I got scared out there. I told him no, I like it. He said he wasn't talking about people. Then he told me to stay in the truck while I'm out there, and he left. I'm thinking he saw something. Tonight's second encounter. To start with, I am a white female. I was adopted 7 years ago by a Navajo family, and we've always been close despite the cultural differences. Still, I learned about skinwalkers firsthand, and they've since become an accepted part of my life. I left Utah at the end of 2012 and was surprised to see the enthusiasm for skinwalker stories. The first incident happened to my adopted uncle. He was driving through the canyon area. They live in Blanding, Utah, in San Juan County. A spot not quite notorious for skinwalkers, but full of them nonetheless. At night, and got that familiar feeling. It was dark outside, but the moon illuminated the canyon and brush enough for him to see out of his side vision that something was running across the desert night. He was in his 40s at the time and a police officer, so a full-grown man. He then started singing and praying in Navajo and kept his eyes on the road in front of him. But he was driving at least 55 to 60 miles an hour, so the shape running through the desert was keeping pace with him despite his high speed. He said that it looked vaguely human-shaped, but paler than any human he had ever seen. Still, he didn't look directly at it, and despite his singing, he was getting more and more scared. One thing my Navajo family has always taught me was that these creatures feed on your fear. This one certainly seemed to. My uncle was shaking and sweating when the running thing picked up speed, outpaced his truck, and then went. It was maybe 30 yards ahead of him. It made a sharp right and began to run toward the road. He knew he was going to directly intersect him, and he made up his mind to put his foot on the gas. Because being braked out in the middle of the road in the dark alone was a death sentence. So it got closer, and he sped up. And just as the two crossed paths, it jumped onto the road. He saw it for the first time then. He described it as a skinny man in jeans and a plaid shirt, typical res wear, with a long face and big yellow eyes that looked like cat eyes. Its arms were thrown up over its head, and its hands were kind of flying out behind it. The worst part was that its mouth was open and seemed to be disconnected from its jaw. Its chin was just flapping around about a foot below its nose. It leapt onto the road and then just as quickly jumped out of the way of his truck, and he didn't see it again. He prayed the whole way home, and they had a ceremony shortly after that. Another encounter happened to my adopted brother, who is one of the most level-headed and unshakable men I had ever met. He was 30 when this happened. He was at our dad's house, partaking in one of these ceremonies, which happens in a hogan. The rule is you never leave the hogan alone, because the magic and energy that you make during these ceremonies is kind of like a supernatural beacon, and you never know what kind of creatures you're attracting. Still, my brother was a pretty rational guy and wasn't afraid of the dark. He had been in the hogan for hours, chanting and praying and all that good stuff, and he needed a smoke break and to take a leak. So against the general rule, he edged out of the roundhouse and out into the night. There was nothing around except 15 or 20 parked cars, all close to the ceremony area. It was a large gathering, so he did his business with no incident and lit up a cigarette. He was standing there staring off into space when he got the feeling of being watched. To shake it off, he walked away from the hogan about 20 feet and scanned the desert. Everything was quiet except for the drums coming from the hogan and singing within. Just as he was about to shrug off this weird feeling and chuck his cigarette, he saw it under the vehicles, a dark shape, 2 shining eyes. The eyes were like an animal's. They didn't glow on their own, but they had reflective light in them, and they glinted right at him. They were yellow. The creature didn't have a shape of an animal he recognized, though. He explained it to me, that it was shaped like Gollum, really skinny with a round human head. He wasn't scared of something that would make me shit my pants instantly. He walked toward the vehicle and bent down to get a closer look. Dust scrambled around, and he could hear a skirting noise. One bony arm shoved some gravel his way, and the next thing he knew, the creature was gone and the vehicle was empty. But then he smelled this disgusting, puke-worthy stench, and he got scared then, because that's one of the worst things in Navajo culture. Bad smells are treated very seriously when they're assumed to be supernatural. So he straightened back up and then realized the source of the smell. A shadow fell over him, covering him from behind. He was around 6'2", so this thing he estimated at 7.5 feet at least. He was shivering and didn't move as it approached him from behind. Until it was standing inches away, he could feel it, smell it, see its shadow. And then the worst thing, he felt it breathe on his neck. My brother said that it sounded like a horse or a cow when it snorts, and its breath was warm. When he looked at his feet, he saw his own shoes, and behind his right foot, a large hoof. So he closed his eyes and started to sing. And right at that moment, his dad and uncle got a terrible feeling from inside the hogan. They bolted up and exited, calling his name. They found him shivering outside, too terrified to talk and too terrified to stop singing in Navajo. It took him months before he shared this with us, and he did so expecting us to laugh or call him crazy. But I completely believe his story. Today's third encounter. Back in February of 2013, I was shoveling a path down the driveway for my daughter to get to her school bus. It was about 5:30 in the morning, still dark outside. I was just at the road's edge when I heard a noise come across the road, which is wooded. It sounded like a long howl, which I believe is what people refer to as the Ohio howl. All I knew at the time was it scared the crap out of me and I ran for the house. At that time I didn't make the connection with Bigfoot, even though I was watching Finding Bigfoot. I was looking for other explanations, like a known animal that would have made that trumpeting noise. After that, I forgot all about it, never gave it a second thought, even when my neighbor told me he heard someone walking out behind his garage late at night in spring. I joked with him at the time. Maybe it was Bigfoot. Little did I know. Fast forward August 2013, we have a cockapoo, and at this time she was under a year old. Like most puppies, they need to urinate when they feel the urge, and haven't learned to hold it. So about 1:30 in the morning, Jessie, the dog, needs to go outside. I took a small flashlight along. The batteries were getting low on the power, but I figured it'd be enough. So while Jessie is trying to find the perfect spot, I decided to pan the flashlight around. Across the road, the weeds had grown very deep and tall. The light caught some eye shine in the weeds. The color was orange to red, which seemed odd. I thought maybe it was just a wild dog. Problem with that, as I forgot, is the ground drops 3 feet on the other side of the road. The eye shine was about 2 feet or so above the road level, which didn't sink until later. What happened next, I will never forget. So one minute I see the eye shine, I look away and check on the dog, and when I pan the light back across the road, it's no longer in the weeds, but on the edge of the road, maybe 40 feet away at most, standing. It never made a sound from the weeds to the roadside. The light I had wasn't strong enough to make out the features, just the silhouette and eye shine. It swayed back and forth, but made no noise. At that moment, I finally realized what was standing in front of me, and ran into the house with the dog, and don't believe the dog knew it was there. I told my wife about it the next day, and what I thought it was. Of course, she didn't believe me. Later on the following day, there was an awful smell of body odor and something dead, which was coming from behind my neighbor's garage. At the time of the sighting, there was no smell. In 2014, I believe I saw the creature at least once more. I was driving up the street at night and saw a crouched figure in their side yard by the woods with the same color eye shine. I didn't stop to check it out. I also may have seen it one night down on County Route 28, Tinker-Trevin Road. I was coming back from picking up my daughter from a friend's house and was heading east on County Route 28 when I rounded the curve in the road and my headlights caught an orange to red reflection in the farmer's field that was at least 6 feet off the ground. At the time, I thought it was just machinery in the field, but later realized that this farmer doesn't leave his machines out in the field like some do. Another time, something ran past the end of my house after dark and turned on the motion light. Within a few seconds of that, every dog in the area was going nuts. No proof, I know. I drive the short bus for special needs children. One morning, I was walking out my driveway to pre-trip my bus when I heard something large run away from the rhododendron that was maybe 6 feet from my bus. The plant was about 6 feet tall and 30 feet around. I believe the creature got close to my bus because when I pre-tripped my bus, it was usually dark out and set off all the lights to make sure they all work. I think it got close to see what makes all the funny lights. During the time when these things were happening, I told a few people. Most didn't believe, laughed at me, or like one friend I told, didn't believe that I saw a Bigfoot, but wanted me to believe that he saw a large dog-like creature when he was hunting in the woods, which ran from him on 2 feet. That was supposed to happen out on County Route 15, Wheat Hill. My boss still busts on me about that. I take it in good humor. Our mechanic may also had a run-in with it. He was telling me about when he was at his uncle's camp at Shedmaro campsites by Lake Ontario. He was down at the camp in the summer of 2014 when this awful smell came out of nowhere. He said he had been hunting for 30 years and he had never smelled anything like it. After a little, the smell stopped. No proof, I know. Even though my wife didn't want to believe, she wouldn't take the dog out after dark. She may even have had a sighting. She told me she also saw eye shine across the road in these trees about 6 feet or so above the ground, and she heard what sounded like big trees being knocked down. The last time I had an experience was October of 2014. She kept telling me about what sounded like trees being knocked down. So I said, let's go to Walmart and get a bright spotlight to help with taking the dog out. On our way to the car, I also heard the noise coming from across the road. That was the last time I had any experience. Where it went to, I can't say. I did notice after the last encounter it left a sign. A tree was twisted and bent at least 6 feet off the ground. I asked what people thought. Some said rot or snow load. I think the Bigfoot did it as a warning. From what I've seen and heard, they are believed to bend and twist a tree to display a boundary. It took a long time to get the courage to cross the road and check on the tree and the surrounding area. I don't look at the woods or night the same way anymore. I check to make sure I can hear birds or insects, and when I can't hear them, I get nervous. Wow. I don't know what you guys are thinking on that last encounter, but that happened in Oswego, New York, and where he is encountering this dark silhouette with orangish red eyes. He's only seeing a silhouette. He's not seeing any features. So, mind you, from where he had his initial encounter to where his friends encounter the hunter that saw a dog-like creature running on two legs is 15 minutes away from each other. This dude is seeing a Dogman, and honestly, it's mistaken identity. I am 100% sure of that. Just because I looked at a map, checked out everything, I'm 100% sure that he was seeing a Dogman. Also, Dogmen, they do very similar things like markings and tree bendings, gifts. So, I don't know, it's just too close to each other. And it's very Dogman-like of what everything, kind of how everything went together. The Skinwalker stories, if you've been with me for a long time, you know Skinwalkers are the one thing that terrifies me. Because of the lore behind it. Now, there's so many different stories in the Navajo lore that it just freaks me out. I mean, you've got something that can shapeshift, that is dealing with black magic, that can poison you, can mess with your mind, and can do all sorts of other things. To me, that is one of the scariest cryptids I know of. And a long time ago, I got in an argument with somebody about a Skinwalker being a cryptid. Now, whether he's in human form, then he's not. But when he's transformed to an animal, then he is a cryptid. He's an unknown, unstudied creature. God, I hate Skinwalker encounters. They just terrify me. The first subscriber submission, I have the person's phone number. I'm going to send them a text tomorrow and try to get a little more detail. But, like they stated, in that area there are no wolves. And this thing was far too big to be your average wolf. I know they get huge, but a Chevy Silverado, that's a big friggin' dog. So, wow. And the hair, the matted hair, the ugliness to it. I found that interesting how they, like wolves are very majestic animals to look at. And this thing had no majesticness to it. So, definitely something not right. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I've got lots of interviews coming up in the near future. Just trying to get this channel going and pounding them out for you guys. My birthday is the 16th, so I have a plan of what I want to do. I'd like to spend the day doing what I love, which is recording. So I'd like to record, put out and upload, take a bit, record, put out and upload, take a bit. I'd like to have about 4 encounters for you guys, or 4 uploads for you guys on my birthday. That way you guys can celebrate it with me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And until next time, guys, farewell.